No compliance with justice implies no amnesty. That's how simple it is. That is the truth. I don't care what pagan Christianity taught you. I don't care about the loving fake promises of those Babylon churches. Nobody gets amnesty from the Lord without complying with justice. And complying with justice means agreeing with Christ and obeying the Son. If you don't comply with justice, there is no amnesty for you. Amnesty has been made available for every individual human being. That's true. But it will only become active on your behalf once you comply with justice. There is no such thing as not complying with justice, yet receiving amnesty. That does not exist. Even among these Babylon governments, even amongst these worldly governments, it works like this, that you can only receive amnesty if you agree to comply with the legal system of the country. If you don't comply with law and order, you don't comply with the structure of that society, you get no amnesty if you had been a criminal. And even if you're not a criminal, but you refuse to comply with the structure of that society, the leaders will take actions against you. Where will you find anyone living in any country and they go against the establishment of that community by causing harm and frustration to the community, and the community just allows them to be? Where will you find that? Or let me give another example. What if you're an employee at some company and you refuse to comply with the safety regulations at the job? Let's say that you're in construction and they tell you to wear safety shoes and to wear a helmet, but you just don't comply with the safety regulations. What thing's going to happen? Your boss is going to fire you because he will tell you, listen, everyone here is obliged to comply with the safety regulations. I don't care if you like the uniform or not. I don't care what your interest is. Well, you are obliged. You have no choice but to comply with the safety regulations here. You don't comply, you can't have a job, you get no wages at the end of the month. That's how simple it is. So you mean to tell me that folks seriously expect you to grant them amnesty without them complying with justice? And you think that it's the right thing to get along with that? Look, there's a difference between holding a grudge against someone for what they've done and being alert. If someone does not comply with justice, they don't make a commitment to be better and to forsake their old ways, then what's going on? They're still operating in injustice. They're still enabling danger. They're still enabling and operating in neglect towards their fellow human beings. They're still narcissistic, centered around themselves. And they're very twisted in their head that they even expect you to comply with it. Look, I'm not telling you to be, vindicative towards people by always using the past against them to control them. I'm not telling you to do that. Yes, you should move forward. You should reconcile. You should walk in peace with people. Just realize, someone that persists in injustice, you can't be at peace with them. You can't walk in love with them. It's not even safe to be around them. Come on now. As I mentioned before, even amongst these pagan governments that are antichrist, if you have someone in a community that sells forbidden goods, someone pretends to be a doctor selling medicine, but those medicines are really drugs that are harming people, do you seriously think that the population is going to take it when the government says, you know what, we are a liberal country over here, so no regulations of the state in the market, so the market has to work this out. So if people are buying the product, well, that's the market. We need to respect the market. Do you seriously think the population is going to take that? No, people would rise up and say, hold on a minute. You are the government. You are the state. You are here to protect us. That guy is selling fake medicine, harming people. You can't allow that guy to do that. Now, if someone sells fake medicine, the state doesn't even have to respond. The medical world, with its medical institutions themselves, will go after that guy. And oh dear, the medical world is very strict and they're very harsh when you're violating their safety regulations. If you attended medical school and you're now doing such crime, man, you're in trouble. They themselves will hand you over to the judge and for prosecution. And if you were never part of medical school, oh there, you're still in trouble because they will come after you. The medical world, even though it's pagan, they are practical and realistic. Nobody gets away with violating the health standards in the medical world. If you are a surgeon or you're just a doctor, you ought to comply with the safety regulations that belongs with being part of the medical world. If you violate those, oh dear, it's going to cost you. So you mean to tell me that the medical world, which is run by pagans, is far more just and far more safe than the Heavenly Father? Come on now. Listen. For example, I'm going to give a parable to you so that you can understand what I'm saying here. If you had someone that lied about you, lied on you, and these lies were believed by other people, and other people took action against you based on their lies. Now, the individual can't undo that others took action against you, but individuals should acknowledge they lied. And those others took action against you should acknowledge they were wrong. Depending on what the actions were, they ought to work now for your betterment. They ought to work for the good, for your well-being and their own well-being. You don't get the right to exploit them, but they ought to change their course of their action. They ought to change the course of their attitude. If people did you wrong and they just want you to forget about it so that they are just at ease, that's injustice. What about your acknowledgement? When they were upset, they act out to be validated. What about your validation? What about your acknowledgement? What about your safety? What about your interest? No, they're only in their own interest and expect you to leave them alone. And they will try to compensate it with kind behavior so they're off the hook. That's injustice. In the world, socially you can get away with it. With the governments of this world, which are run by pagan rulers, you can't get away with that. In the medical world, with its medical institutions, you can't get away with that. Do you seriously think you can get away with it with Christ? Absolutely not. Yet, there are believers, misled by pagan Christianity, that think that they ought to grant amnesty to people without any compliance on their behalf towards justice. That is why many people in the Western world travel to places like Africa, where believers are very strong supernaturally. I'm not saying there's no mess going on in Africa, absolutely, but on the continent of Africa, where believers are facing wizardry and witchcraft far more intense and far more directly, without it being covered up by the culture, they are far more serious, far more practical. There are many believers that were stuck in church in the Western world and they traveled to places like Africa to learn from believers over there. Why is that? Because many of the believers here in the West, they've been lied to by pagan Christianity, and that's why they're ineffective. Evil can have its full course around them, and they don't understand why. While you have believers in Africa, I'm not praising believers in Africa now, I'm just pointing out believers in Africa in general, man, they're quite real, they're quite direct. They don't put up with poverty, sickness, and all of those things. While in the Western world, they tell you, well, it's just part of life. When you get older, your body begins to break down. Or when people just don't want something, it's their will. They have a right to will with effort, they will, and all of that. That's why many believers in the Western world face so much trouble. Look, you will suffer persecution when you follow Christ, that's true. But there's one thing you should never put up with, and those are the plagues of Babylon. But there's the thing, when you agree with Babylon, you automatically activate its plagues on your behalf. So how can you overcome the plagues of Babylon if you agree with Babylon? And here's the point where many agree with Babylon. And here's the thing, even Babylon doesn't agree, even the rulers of Babylon doesn't agree with this. It's the common people of Babylon, the common people that hold Babylon together, they're the ones agreeing with this. So even Babylon is not in agreement with this, but the people in Babylon agree with this, if you get what I'm saying. And the people in Babylon, those common folks, they want amnesty without their compliance with justice. And those common people are using pagan Christianity to blackmail believers into giving them relief so that they won't have to face themselves, so they can continue in their relief seeking, in their exploitation without facing any consequences. Why do you think predators are so fond of pagan Christianity? Why do you think there are so many predators having many fake testimonies of how Christ saved them? Why do you think many predators get along very well with pagan Christians? Because they use pagan Christianity to blackmail believers, the real believers amongst them, in donating strength to them so they are at ease. And here's one thing. There's one figure in the Bible I want to mention now. Even though this figure in the Bible did not agree with Christ, even though he became pagan, I still will recommend his attitude. I'm not telling you to follow his ways, but his attitude that he had was very real. Esau, the twin brother of Jacob, the elder one, the one that should have received the blessing, but through trickery, it went to Jacob. The Most High permitted it because he wanted to work out his purpose through Jacob. But just because the Most High permits something to happen because he wanted to use it for his purpose doesn't mean that what happened was right. It doesn't mean the Most High agrees with it. What happened to Esau? Once Esau realized what his father and his brother and also his mother did to him, man, he turned on Jacob, and Jacob had to flee. After a while, Esau realized, hold on a minute, I need to move on. So Esau moved on. Esau kept mating and making children. He built his own estate. Esau became rich, and he continued to provide for his offspring. Esau did not allow what happened in the past to haunt him. But he also realized, I need to move on, and not only that, I can only reconcile with Jacob if Jacob complies with justice. What happened? Esau did not seek any contact with Jacob. He didn't. He didn't at all. It was Jacob, after going through many trials and tribulations himself, when he was humbled by the Most High and he changed his attitude for the better, it's then that the Most High offered an opportunity for him to be reconciled with Esau. And Esau was very willing to reconcile with him. But Esau, even though he was a pagan, he was far more in agreement with the Lord than Jacob was. Because here's the thing. Esau realized, hold on a minute, this is wicked, this is wrong. If I agree with granting my younger brother to cheat me like this, that will enable more victimization towards me in the future. So Esau, even though he wasn't what we consider righteous, he was practical. He knew that peace with his relatives was important, but also knew there must be safety. And here's the thing, the Most High made sure that Jacob had its own heritage, so that when they reconciled, both had their own heritage, so that Jacob wouldn't depend upon Esau. So Esau's children wouldn't be bothered by Jacob. Now here's the thing, Esau reconciled with Jacob, so that was over. That empty was over, okay? But Esau did not consider reconciliation until there was a change in Jacob's attitude. Now, that Esau, that historical human being Esau, yeah, man, he was far more practical than many many people claim to be believers today. That Esau was more in line with the attitude of Christ than Jacob was. I mean, Jacob, he tolerated a lot of stuff from Laban. But that's the thing, Jacob was in the negative. So when you are in the negative, you attract negative. So Jacob, on the other hand, brought it on himself. Now, I'm not saying that Laban was innocent, absolutely not, but Jacob was in the negative. So he had to face his negativity and turn away from it. But now today you have folks that don't want to face anything. They just want to throw their weight on someone else to be relieved, and they expect you to sponsor them. And pagan Christianity tells you, do it, you need to forgive, you need to move on. I'm saying it one more time. No compliance with justice means no amnesty. That is not a principle, that's reality. That's how it ought to be. That's how you maintain safety and welfare and well-being amongst your community. Why do you think that in the world, if you want to become a teacher at high school, they check your background? Do you think they do that just to look into your personal life? No, they want to guarantee safety and welfare of the pupils at that high school. So they can't just allow anyone to come and teach them, because that teacher takes part in the mental development of those pupils. So if the school would allow just anyone to come and teach those kids, they would contribute to the backwards development of those people and how they would become later as adults. You have to look at the bigger picture here. Look, Esau's attitude, I'm not talking about his pagan attitude here, but his attitude in not reconciling with Jacob unless there was safety. I recommend that attitude. I really do. The question is, why are people putting up with violence? Because this attitude of people demanding amnesty without their complying with justice is violence. Why are people putting up with it? Because we want things the easy way. We want relief as soon as possible. I told you before, the easiest way is not always the best way. Look, if you come from an oppressive environment, that's where you grew up in, and now you're free from that environment is only oppressive because people allowed it to be, and people had a vested interest in having the environment polluted that way. You just grew up in an environment. You didn't choose that environment. Others did. Others kept it going. Now you were smart enough to want to be freed from that environment, and that's a good thing. Now, you're out of that environment. But that environment needs to be dealt with. I mean, just think about it. When the Most High delivered the Israelites out of Egypt, he led them in such a way, because he knew that the Egyptians would come after them anyway, so the Most High allowed the Egyptians to come after them. That's why he led them to the Red Sea, so that he would make a way for them through the Red Sea, and their enemies would destroy themselves while going after them. By doing that, the Most High destroyed the oppressed environment that kept his people oppressed. Because if Egypt would remain intact and Egypt wouldn't change, then the perpetrators would still be around and able to oppress them at a distance. No, the Most High destroyed the Egypt of then, so that the Israelites would not be haunted anymore. The Most High didn't tell the Israelites, well, you're out of Egypt now, that's the past, forget all about it, and find a way to deal with it here and now. No, before he led them out of Egypt, he made sure they were compensated to the full for everything they went through to receive the wealth of Egypt. Wealth transfer took place. And not only that, when they crossed the Red Sea, the oppressed environment was destroyed also. So the Most High took care of everything. But here's the thing. When I look at the attitude of people today, men who claim to follow Christ, I begin to wonder, are they even I'm not going to ask whether they're born again or not. I'm thinking, do they even read Scripture? And if they read Scripture, do they look at the bigger picture? Do they notice things? Because, oh dear, man, this video is not structured, okay? It's like a rant I'm giving it. But I'm giving this rant to inspire you. About my own life individually, when I look at how the Lord moved in my life, the Lord that led me in such a way that everyone, just like those Egyptians that were of the Israel, that anyone that had any agreement against me will destroy themselves by continuing after me. That's how the Lord has led me all the way. And I was not aware of what the Lord was doing. But here's what I've learned. When the Lord decides to lead you to a difficult situation, it is because there's something else that the Lord wants to keep out. There is this meme I encountered years back, and I encountered it over and over again. And the meme said the following: God, why are you leading me to troubled waters? And God answers, or God replied, because your enemies can't swim. Well, with what I've just said in this recording, just think about that. Don't just look at the troubled waters. Look at who's not in the troubled waters. Look at who can't remain in the troubled waters. Look at all of that. Well, that's it for now. Agree with Christ and be at peace.